Construction Talk. Hosted by Whimsy.
Well, I guess the obvious difference between Constructing Excellence and lots of other bodies is it's where the businesses come together, and that's what really interests me. I think we do need a place where the whole of the industry talks to itself, and we have that in the Strategic Forum, and there are a number of other bodies where the trade associations and the professional institutions come together, and it's important that they do. But I really do believe that the differences that we're looking for will be made in businesses. That increasingly we're going to be looking at competition between business models rather than competitions between institutions or professions or individual job titles, which is to a degree how it's been over our recent past, and it's not been helpful and not been healthy, so that we see competition for how we go to clients, how projects are taken to clients, and that's influenced to a degree by the role that individuals want to play in that and protecting their position and so on. That has to break down, and I think it will break down by businesses increasingly decided that they want to build a whole proposition to clients, which is integrated, fundamentally integrated, which is collaborative as far as it can be, which means both parties have to be clear about what they expect each other to do and then to make their side of the bargain, and which will therefore lead to, we hope, a better product for a better price and for better whole life value. So that's, I think, the Constructing Excellence agenda, and it's certainly mine. And more power to its elbow in driving that forward. In terms of BIM, I think we had a sort of very exciting moment. I announced about a year ago that government was going to mandate BIM. Really what it's mandating is not BIM, it's mandating what it wants in the way of information drops to make its own decisions and then to run its assets when they're handed over. And we have this terrible fracture in our industry between designing things, between constructing them, and then between operating them and owning them and so on, and to a degree trying to fix that in a way I'll be talking about today. So the contribution that BIM can make, I think, will be to integrate that whole process. So we got kind of excited. It's now time to calm down and do the hard work, and it will be very hard work. The protocols that we need, and the way we need to analyse the job, and again I think it will lead to changes in business models, is just sheer hard work of a kind that in truth we haven't done in the past. Our plan of work has been too outlined and not detailed enough. Terrific piece of work, I think, when the RIBA first built out the plan of work, but we haven't really built on it to show that we understand the sequence through which you design and construct things in a proper way. So we criticise contractors for programs that have only got 90 operations on them and we can't find the critical path. And then we have one bar for design. I hope BIM will break that down, that it will bring us together, make us look at the whole life of the product and make us look collaboratively at it. And again, as I say, I think it will change business models. I think this is a tough one, and we've had, as Mark and Julie will tell you, had some quite interesting conversations around exactly what it is that SMEs, and I'll come back to the different S and M, want. Because often the message comes over as, we want our fair share of the work, and we don't want that to be competed out. And we've got something in the green. We've got the same thing in the Green Deal, for example, where a lot of small builders are complaining about the potential market power of the utilities and of the big retailers, and saying, you need to protect us from those. And my answer to that is, I don't quite know how to go to a minister and say the industry is a bit worried that the way the market is working might produce lower prices for a household. And I think the same thing is true generally for construction. So I've made no secret of saying the reason for allowing access to SMEs to the marketplace and to removing the barriers to entry for that are to get a better offer for the taxpayer, not to kind of dish out a fair share of work. And I can say that because I don't have to get elected. So what I was looking for all the time is where actually a better offer would be available, but it's being blocked out by a stupid, massive geographical framework or something, where people can't get in. So I've forgotten the precise wording of that clause, but I think what it's meant to do is to say all the time, and Francis Moore is four square on this, all the time what we're looking for is value for the taxpayer. As I say, the belief in SMEs is that they can produce better value for the taxpayer. And by the by, that they will grow faster than big businesses, and our only way out of this hole we're in is to grow our way out of it. So I don't see an inconsistency between wanting to support SMEs and expecting to get a good deal. And cheaper is a slightly loaded word. But yeah, if it can be bought cheaper by somewhere else, why wouldn't it be? And you might want to come back to that, and many people might as well. So what one's looking for is obstructions to better offers from markets being too closed off. As I say, from lazy and unintelligent frameworks and the like, from processes which are too complex. This is a particular beef of Francis Maude's. Pre-qualification conditions are almost impossible to meet for a new business, and yet that new business may have an offer. Procurement processes which are so long that, in his words, you use the will to live long before you submit a price. All of that is real meat for looking at. And we're doing a very serious piece of work at the moment on so-called lean procurement, which we've been doing with Unipart, about where, actually, we're just putting burdens into the process. Similarly, he's very clear that he wants procurement to be used only for value for money. And I'm very clear that we should stop loading documents with questions to which the answer makes no difference. So, how many apprentices have you got, for example? So we can say we asked the question. If we ask you how many apprentices you've got, it should make a difference how many you have as to whether you get the job or not, or we shouldn't be asking you. So I think the help, if that's the right word, comes from trying to get rid of burdens in the way of getting to the marketplace, which are just too much for a business which has to spend most of its time making its living to service. And they are about then, nonetheless, getting value for the taxpayer. So I do find it necessary to try and keep these two things in one's mind. You want access to the marketplace, you want innovation and growth and drive that small businesses have, and fleetness of foot and the things that Mark's talking about. But you do still want to build. And don't forget, I'm talking about mass government construction program, because that's my job. You do want to build long-term, stable supply chains where people can innovate and get better and better and better. But inevitably, that means some consolidation in the marketplace. So that was that one. Let me go to the payment one. I mean, I think on payment, we're probably doing almost as much as we can. We have said that from the 1st of January this past year, what your contract should say, and if it doesn't, let me know, is that you must get down money to Tier 3 in 30 days. That's a contractual obligation. There is a mystery shopper line at the Cabinet Office that you can call if you're not being paid within that time, which can be anonymous if you'd rather, or public if you'd rather. And we are developing a much tighter relationship with our key suppliers. We know who they are, the top 30 construction suppliers to the government, and they will not be suppliers for long if they don't start acting in that way. And that's part of a much bigger and more complicated cultural program of saying to the big players, the reason that politicians show this big interest in SMEs is partly because of their belief in growth and innovation, but also because you treat them like shit. And if you won't protect them, politicians feel they have to. But the industry that we're looking for is one in which you nurture your supply chain. You want people to be safe and well. You want them to invest in their own businesses in skills and training, and to know they've got work coming to do it, and so on. And that's a long, long battle. But I do see the beginnings of it happening, and I do have conversations with people now where you can kind of see, not the light bulb going on, because that would be arrogant, but you can see them starting to believe that you can develop a better proposition. And that, and I'm using Ian Tyler's words again here, he said to me, really our innovation at the moment goes into winning the bid. And we're just starting to understand that the real power of innovation lies in our supply chain. And that's where our competitiveness actually lies. And that will be a huge, as easily said, that will be a huge change. What can I do about your bank? I'm not sure what government can do about bad debt, and particularly kind of domestic and private bad debt. For the most part, we wouldn't want government being too much of a partner in private relationships made between consenting adults. What Vince is very keen on, and they've got Project Merlin and the like, is to try and open up lending to perfectly well-founded businesses, and to stop the idea that there are certain classes of business that you don't lend to. It's a real struggle, I can't deny it, because, of course, when you talk to the banks, they say there's no such rule. And yet I hear from people like you and many others that you've been told, the bank says you're a construction business and we don't lend to construction businesses. And so I think I'm going to have to admit defeat on that. I don't know. I just don't know what can be done about it. And, of course, the banks are in a situation they're told, strengthen your balance sheet, lend more money. strengthen it even more because of the euro, lend more money, and we're just in a very unpleasant bind. I'm going to say that it is a genuinely preoccupying interest at number 10 and at the very highest levels in my department is what can be done about access to finance. But as you would expect, I've got no quick fix. And I think, you might want to come back on what government could do about bad debt. That you basically advance credit for somebody who can't repay it. I don't know how government would be in that, what part it could play in that, in a private contract.
I mean, on the bad payment is a topic very close to my heart. There is no doubt I get competitive advantage by having a team of people that paid within 30 days. I know if I put my payment terms back to 90 or 120 days, it divorces the cash and the reward from doing a good service. And my business relies on doing good service for my customers. It brings the innovation, it makes them part of the team. It's my competitive advantage paying in 30 days, as I'm sure it's yours. I hope that if the larger contractors decide to pay on 120 days and longer, I know that their teams aren't as good as mine. In terms of a government edict to pay us all on time, I have to say I'm very sceptical. I have members of my supply chain who haven't been paid on MOD contracts within 2 years, despite having these edicts within MOD contracts. It's just too easy to say, I'm sorry, the payment's disputed, and it just goes into the ether. So I will be very sceptical that that's going to work, Paul, I'm afraid, but good luck to you. In terms of picking up the small work, my own view is that really the 5% on particularly the Green Deal, but on any work that we can do on renovation, must be a win both for the Treasury in terms of more work being done, but also in tackling the vast backlog we've got to do in terms of the existing stock of houses, to bring them up to some sort of energy efficiency to meet the Kyoto principles that Paul's already mentioned. And I feel it's perverse that the government's prepared to put a 5% VAT on the fuel, and yet the measures to try and reduce it in a low carbon economy get taxed at 20%. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Government gas can't try and assemble an industry and can't try and assemble a supply chain. It has to start buying in a way that pulls the right kind of behaviour. So the reward for sharing innovation has to be exactly the point that we've been making here, that you stay in the supply chain, that you're worth having around, which is why I think you have to keep relationships longer term, why you can't arbitrarily keep breaking up by saying, no, a quarter of that's got to go to an SME, when the SMEs are already there in the supply chain and you're displacing one. So I don't see that incentivising what should be happening in a good industry anyway is a government function. Encouraging them, well, we're doing what we can. We are let's say, mandating, actually quite a subtle difference, but a relevant one. Actually not mandating BIM, we're mandating what we want out of the process, which I think can probably only be provided by BIM, in truth. And then very much driving a program of what the protocols are, what the means of exchanging information are, so that everybody can start to participate. I don't think, though, that would include being fixed about who does what and when all the time. I think there needs to be a whole new degree of plan of work. And I've said once before today that I think the RIBA's original plan of work was a fantastic piece of work that we haven't built on, probably gone backwards. And I still don't really understand, actually, how many contractors have been on a project where they've been criticised for their programme because it's only got 96 operations in it and you can't find the critical path. And at the top of the programme it says design, one bar, or maybe one for each consultant at the most. We really don't understand what the process of designing a job is. But because I think business models will change, I wouldn't want to fix the roles. I think, for example, in engineering services, the consultants will become probably what many of them are already, with concept designers, and the work will go down into the supply side, into the contracting side. So, setting some clear protocols. We've established not time to describe it, but a very strong structure by which we will drive this one single thing, even though it's kind of a supply side issue, because we have such a belief in it, and also a belief that people have to have the confidence to know, as I say, they're not going down a cul-de-sac. And then, same point about competition, about incentives, really. There's a slight incentive in that if you can't keep up, you won't be a supplier to government. So year one, which starts next year, is if you can't read a spreadsheet, you're in trouble, and that's it. You know, the protocols that we're using can be exchanged on Excel or other spreadsheet, but it'll get tougher every year. And for a small player, what will happen who doesn't want to or can't participate, what will happen is what happens in America, which is either they will, or they'll be so valuable in their supply chain that they'll be supported by somebody further up the supply chain.
Paul, Whimsy in particular, but a lot of Whimsy followers and supporters have always talked about this region, for example, being the leader of the low-carbon economy. We feel, as advocates of the manufacturing industry, that we've got a large skill set, a large skill base, and that entirely some of that is transferable to the construction industry. And dare I say, the West Midlands becomes the region that pioneers significantly low-carbon tech and perhaps even BIM. Could we invite your comments on that as a kind of prospect and the challenges there for a region, but also to pull in the general attitude of building regulations, and Trevor mentioned it a bit earlier, this change perhaps from what has been a statutory checking process to now a far more open, solution-focused approach?
Well, one can only welcome that. Let me start with the low carbon thing. If you are leaders, God bless you for it, and I hope other regions feel the same way about themselves. You know, one wants everybody to start moving. I think this is really where there are some really tough challenges, both for industry and for government. You know, because there is no doubt that there is a bit of government that thinks that money's, the situation financially is so important that for the time being we can, be a bit slower, possibly on the low carbon thing. And meanwhile, the problem continues to rack up. I think this is where the difference between M businesses and S businesses really cuts in. And the IGT report says that I think there's a tremendous amount in the hands of really very small businesses here. The businesses that are in and out of people's homes, day in, day out, many of whom, notwithstanding the colour of their van, are genuinely trusted by their customers. And they're in a terrific position to spread the word, to expand the service they provide, and to start to brigade things like the Green Deal. Many conversations with people like Richard Diamond and others on how one keeps the access to that marketplace absolutely open to the only resource that we have, which is the army, as say, a very small business in and out of people's homes. That's what it will come down to. I think that some big businesses will brigade that, by the way, and I think for every business has got to decide, therefore, where it wants to be. Do you want to be a small business, but a big in a big program where, I don't know, Tesco or British Gas or somebody will be the lead, where I guess they'll do your marketing for you, but it will be competitively tougher? Or do you want to integrate a team? Because I think we do need an integrated proposition for households. We can't go knock one at a time. Will you start to integrate a proposition where you say to a client, I've come to do your energy efficiency retrofit, and you see it right through? Or will you stay as a single trade business doing a part of that? That's an individual business decision. But I do think the opportunities are enormous. I think the other trusted organisation to organise this is a local authority, beyond their own housing stock. And because I think that government won't go as fast as one might hope that it would, I hope that local authorities will start to market, encourage people to come together and develop propositions for these people. And that they will do so as in precisely the way it's been described as a positive solution-basing thing. On regulations more generally, Oliver Letwin has a book of 20,000 regulations. He's got a little list, as Gilbert and Sullivan would say. And you will probably know, some of you, that there's a thing called the Red Tape Challenge, which is, for construction, starts probably just before Christmas. Is that confirmed now? I haven't know. Every time I mention a date, someone says, that's not definite yet. And I think it was going to open, I think, originally on about the 15th of December and close on New Year, which is a terrific time to be talking to the construction industry. It's now going rather comfortably into the new year. And the principle of the Red Tape Challenge is that every single regulation goes back in the pot and only survives if there's a good case for it. And everyone's invited to say, get rid of this and get rid of that. Oliver Letwin himself would actually get rid of the building regulations and replace it with an assurance-based model. I'm not quite sure how that would work. And of course, the building regulations are full of things that politicians have added to there. So I'm not sure who the first politician will be to stand up and say, let's scrub the disabled access regulations, for example. I think that will be a slow thing. But there is a determination to find wasted, duplicative and unhelpful regulations and get rid of them.
So I guess, obviously, we're all aware that climate change has come at a fairly inconvenient time, and it's the current Minister with responsibility for building regulations, Andrew Stepnell, is keen that you all do your bit to help achieve compliance with zero carbon buildings by 2011 for new homes and other buildings from 2019. So there's a massive challenge there. I think the role of people like myself and colleagues is to do our best to help you to do that by finding the simplest approach, particularly when we're talking to those of you involved in domestic house extension, for example. Part L is becoming increasingly complex. We have to study a lot ourselves just to understand it. But if we can do that and provide you with simple answers, that will help. So I see that as our sort of a key role over the next few years. There was something. Did you want me to think?
Retrofit programme, housing associations.
Retrofit, again, there's lots of. We see difficulties at the moment, and some of you you'll be more aware than most of us. But retrofitting, sealing up buildings, and stopping the sort of ventilation, all that kind of stuff is great. But if you get it wrong, then all sorts of problems occur. And we see that already with things like dry rot in Victorian homes that are being sort of sealed up to. So there's definitely an expertise having to grow in that area. We're not there yet, but it's something we need to be working with you to help you achieve that as we move over the next few years.
Great, thank you, Trevor. Mark, any closing comments?
Well, the IGT report's been mentioned, and I don't know how many of you have been through it, but I would commend it to you if you're looking for how the changes that are facing this industry are going to affect us all. It asks a lot of questions which, if you look in your own business, your own businesses, might give you some of the answers of the direction you ought to be taking. So I'd commend the IGT report to you.
Great, thank you, Mark. Julia, any comments?
Just one final one. I think the day for the day of the complaining, whinging SME is long gone. The opportunity is now here for SMEs to be progressive, self-determinating and integrated. That's where we're coming from. However, it would be nice to have some investment in that process.
Instructions for